And we are live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. An American Werewolf in New Jersey. Another episode 53, I believe, and the triumphant return once again of Something Shitty This Way Comes. It troubles me a great deal to have to bring this to you and discuss this movie in the first place. Because I actually had to watch it, and it's that bad. So before I'm not going to get into any sort of long prologue or anything like that. Let's get to it. Here we go. So we're here today to talk about Joe Dante's 1981 non-tour de force, The Howling, which is, in my opinion, perhaps the most overrated horror, the most overrated werewolf movie of them all. People talk about this movie like, it's just up there in the clouds, and it is just god-awful. The Howling was originally written by it was a book, and I think it was published in 1976 by an author named Gary Brandner. I used to have a copy of it, a paperback copy, back when I was middle school age or something like that, and it read very well. I don't know that it was particularly scary, but it was intriguing. The concept of a woman who experiences a sexual assault and being unable to move forward in life, she and her husband decide to take a vacation, or they decide to travel to this resort, and the resort is full of werewolves, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember. At the time, I thought it was okay. Probably looking at it now, 40 years later, I probably would say that I wouldn't call it among the greatest things I've ever read. But at the time, it served its purpose. And 5 years later, they turned it into this movie directed by Joe Dante. And Joe Dante has been known to bring us such hits and classics as Gremlins. So if anybody wants to run him out of town on a rail for that one, I'd be greatly appreciative. He did do a couple of those episodes of that Showtime series Masters of Horror, which was actually pretty good. And he actually directed a decent movie that I enjoyed a great deal called Inner Space with Dennis Quaid. Hold on, we got some comments. Eric is here. Eric is in the house, and he says, all right, brother, perhaps the only Dante movie I haven't seen. I love his work, so let's hear why I should avoid it. Well, I hope to spare you the pain that I had to undergo. Now, this book was written by Brandner, but the screenplay was not. It was written by two men named John Sayles and Terrence H. Winkless. And they brought us such cinematic classics as Alligator and Piranha. Now, so that kind of tells you where we're at, what kind of ballpark we're in right now. Alligator and Piranha. Now, here's the thing. This is the 40th anniversary of The Howling, which is considered one of the top werewolf movies, probably, I'd say in the top 5, easily in the top 10. I have no idea why. This screenplay has veered off from the novel, which had a relatively solid premise, to something I'm not sure that entirely makes sense. The Karen character in this movie, played by Dee Wallace, is an investigative reporter, and she's been in contact with someone she believes to be a serial killer. So she's going to go out on her own and meet the serial killer in a porno booth, in a porno theater. Yeah, I don't understand under what kind of premise this actually works, where you're supposed to do this sort of thing. She's, it's the 80s. She's, moving through the streets, and she goes into a porno booth to meet someone who might be a serial killer, to get some sort of exclusive story. She's mic'd up. She's got police protection that's so far removed that they essentially lose her. And the next thing you know, she's in a porno theater with this guy named Eddie. And Eddie, she believes, is the serial killer. And of course, why wouldn't you meet a serial killer in a porno booth? A woman, yeah. Why wouldn't a woman with no gun and, anything like that? Why wouldn't you want to meet a serial killer in a porno booth? This just makes complete sense. At some point, she's instructed to watch the pornographic movie. And this is actually happening in the movie. I'm actually describing parts of this. As he talks to her, there are scenes there where he's actually licking his lips. It's like so over the top and ridiculous. And then I guess he proceeds to change, but you can't really see it because he's in silhouette like you see here in the picture. And then she turns around, and I suppose you don't see the change, but you're supposed to understand that she sees it. And so she just completely freaks out. At this point, the police have sort of caught up to both of them. They've caught up to both of them. And the one cop just starts shooting into the porno booth, pretty much point blank, and doesn't hit her, but kills Eddie. Hold on a second. We've got Adelaide Dutra. I don't know what any of that means. Hello. I'm not sure what you're saying here, but welcome to the show. And then I've got my old buddy Steve. Yeah, it sounds hot, doesn't it? Yeah, this really gets you going. What wouldn't get you going about this? 10 minutes into this movie, I noticed, and let's get something straight. This is like Carrie. I'd never seen this movie before. So this isn't some like old resentment where I'm just, finally grinding my axe after all this time because I have this platform. I had never seen this movie until about 3 or 4 days ago in preparation for this. So there's always the possibility. This is the same thing as the Amityville Horror in that, I may have actually liked it, in which case I would still do something shitty, but I would say I was wrong. Okay, this is actually a good movie, and this is why it's a good movie. So, I'm not opposed to learning. This turned out not to be the case. I paid $3.99 on Amazon because I didn't want to take the risk of buying it for a something shitty episode, and then I'm stuck with this movie that I might or probably won't like. 10 minutes into it, I found that I just kind of stopped watching it, and I was doing something on my computer. 15 minutes into it, I actually said to myself, and out loud, because I was in the room by myself watching it, I want my $3.99 back. I want my money back. I wanted my $4 back 15 minutes into this movie. Thank God it's a 90-minute movie because it makes... when you're watching a bad movie, you want it to be as short as possible. I think when I did the Amityville Horror, it was like 2 hours and 10 minutes. When I did Stoker's Dracula, it was like 2 hours and 10 minutes. Blessedly, this was 90 minutes, but it was painful every step along the way. So what ends up happening is she's PTSD'd. She's sort of repressed the memory of whatever she saw when she turned around. So her therapist decides to send her to his retreat up in the mountains. And of course, the mountains, it's basically a retreat or a community, a commune of some sort, full of werewolves. Now, if you're thinking, fuck me, that must be my bad ear. I couldn't have possibly heard. Yes, it's a resort that is populated by werewolves, an entire resort of werewolves. This is supposed to be one of the top 5 werewolf movies of all time. Overhyped when you finally got to sit down and watch. I have no idea why people think, and this has spawned countless sequels. I think at least 7 or 8. I don't know exactly how many. I barely got through the first one. Wow. Ripped off, spending only $4. That's saying something. Yeah. If I could talk to Bezos, if I ran into him on the street, I would say, give me my $4 back. There should be some sort of like, I don't even know why this would like this should be part of a streaming service where people that have already paid get to see it, because it's not right to charge people $4 for this movie. It's awful. It's awful. It's a bad script. It's a bad story. There's absolutely no chemistry between the Dee Wallace character, and I'm not putting up a lot of photos for all this because there's just no point. You do have some quaint things going on here. John Carradine, the famous actor and horror star, is in it as part of the commune. And he's apparently an old werewolf who just wants to live, wants to die because, he's struggling with getting old. All the physical things he can't do. But, not that you really care. Slim Pickens is in it. The great Slim Pickens. There he is shaking hands with Dee Wallace. He's like the sheriff of the town. And, of course, he's a werewolf also. Yes, you heard me right. Slim Pickens is a fucking werewolf in this movie. Okay, so that's where we're at. That's where we're at for character development. It's awful. Dee Wallace is married. None of these people have any chemistry whatsoever because it's a bad script. I think that some of these people are just bad actors because I've never seen them in anything else ever again. It's just bad. My question, there's like zero character development in any of this. And my constant question to myself throughout it was, what was the strength of this movie? If it's not the performances, it's not direction, it's not the script, what's the there? What's the there? Is there any there? And what I finally, there's a sex scene because it's the 80s. This is 1981, so there's always a gratuitous sex scene. And that's where you start to get the first signs of transformation, which I'll get into in a little bit. But then all of a sudden, I don't know if you can see this, it actually becomes animated as they pan out because both people are having sex. Dee Wallace's husband is stepping out and banging the local honeypot werewolf. She scratched him, so he becomes a werewolf like the next night or something like that. And it actually turns into animation. Now, hold on a second. We've got another comment here. I don't want to spend too much time on this. Wow, 8 films. 8th is a reboot, and now it's getting rebooted again for Netflix. Yeah, I saw that. I was going to get into that. Directed by the director of the new It movies. Jeez, beat that dead horse. Yeah, man, you got to milk every possible drop of blood out of there to get every single shitty, unoriginal thing and squeeze every last dollar. The blood. Now, I can live with it. I can live with the Netflix reboot. Okay, you might have half a chance because it could be like what they did with Dracula. What'll piss me off is if it's like Netflix starts to offer these shows that you have to pay extra in addition to, kind of like Disney does. I don't think they're going to do that, though. It'll probably be like HBO, in which case, I'm already paying for Netflix. I'll sit down and watch it, probably understanding that it's not going to be great. What Netflix did with Dracula, though, and that Danish guy, they got to play it. That was halfway decent. And that was a 3-part series. And the second one, the entire episode was the Demeter trip from Transylvania to England. And I've always said that's my favorite part of the entire book. And someone should just make an entire movie about that part of the book. And then someone sort of halfway did. They made an episode in the 3-episode series. You lost me with the animated wolf sex. Yeah, there's animated wolf sex. Now, I, at this point, just want everybody all the characters, not the real people. I want all these characters to just die. I want them to die. They're not interesting. They're annoying. Their performances are awful. There's one scene where one of the local honeypot werewolf is glaring at Dee Wallace, and she literally looks at her like, I mean, like she actually does that, like glares at her, and then starts staring, and you're like, what the hell is this? It's like some sort of high school performance with special effects. Now, that brings me to the special effects. The special effects are actually pretty good. For the time, they were state of the art. So Rob Bottin does get credit for good special effects. And about 5 minutes ago, I asked, what is the strength of this movie? And so I'm going to say it's the transformation scenes. What they did here was create these very grotesque sort of werewolf transformations. Apparently, Rob Bottin used a lot of air bladders, that he covered up on top of, these people's skin, then covered it with makeup or, these prostheses. So it looked like their skin was bubbling. They're long transformations. But the problem is that the transformations are, the first transformation that you see is a woman where I think she literally sits there and watches the guy change. Like she just sits there in the room and watches this guy change, knowing that he's going to kill her. She doesn't try to get away. She just stands there and watches. And it's a good 3 minutes. I mean, you figure it's probably taking a little longer that's just, what they're showing. But I mean, it makes no sense of why somebody would watch somebody do something like this. And this is the final creature transformation. No disrespect to Rob Bottin. I'm not really a fan of the canine hind-legged, but I still stand on two legs kind of werewolves, which is kind of what these are. They're kind of like, they reminded me of the werewolves in Dog Soldiers, or I should say the Dog Soldiers werewolves remind me of the Howling werewolves. I'm not necessarily a fan. There is one scene in there where the woman, unfortunately, one woman gets killed, and it's kind of scary because he's just kind of in her face for a very long time before he bites her, and then that's kind of it. The effects were, but you know something? Here's the deal, bro, and this is for anybody who's watching this. You can go on YouTube and watch the transformation and spare yourself 90 minutes and spare yourself the annoyance that I kind of, it looks like, that kind of does. It makes it look like a rabid Easter bunny or something like that. So we're not done yet. Apparently, Dee Wallace finds out that these people are all werewolves, and with the friend, she manages to get away, only to find out, you figure it out, that she's also been scratched or bitten or something like that. She's a newscaster. So she sits there in the middle of her return to work, giving this live news report, and she starts to report against type and what the program was scheduled for, to talk about her experience up in this commune. And so people don't think that she's crazy. She actually starts to transform on live TV into a werewolf. Okay, that's kind of okay, no big deal. All right, you can do something with that. Here's the problem. This is what she turned into. What the hell is that? Now, somebody told me that this movie has comedic elements, and there is actually one scene where all the men in the commune are going on some sort of hunt because there's a wolf abroad, because Dee Wallace is complaining that you heard a wolf howling. So everybody's, hint, hint, nudge, nudge in on the joke. So they go on some sort of hunt, and some circus music is actually playing, and that should have just been the soundtrack for the whole fucking movie, because it feels like you're at a circus that just really isn't very entertaining and ends up taking about 2 hours of your time. It's just all the way bad. It's bad, it's bad, it's bad, and stay away from it. Stay away from it. Now, they are like Eric said, doing this remake through Netflix. So who knows? Maybe they'll, I don't know. Maybe they'll polish this turd up somehow. The premise itself doesn't make sense. Why would there be a whole commune of werewolves? I don't see how that works. I mean, you have a story like that that's somewhat similar today with Underworld, where in the first Underworld movie, all of these werewolves are living together, but they're living almost underground. Here, these people are living like in Northern California, in this commune resort, where people come in and visit and things like that. They're not, like living under the city, like in the sewers or something like that, where, like this kind of secret war is going on, which, did kind of work to successfully suspend disbelief. Here, this is just ludicrous. The entire premise is ludicrous. And so, yeah, save your $3.99. If you want to see the transformations, watch them on YouTube. Those are worthwhile. All respect to Rob Bottin. Did she turn into a Wookiee? She turned into, it looked like a kitten. And of course, her one friend threw at it because her husband, I think he gets killed or something like that, ends up shooting her. So she turns and yeah, it's awful. And yeah, there you go. So here's the thing. Now, what I do always with something shitty is I compare it to a movie that I felt came out at the same time and is much more worth your time. Now, I dug for about 2 years prior and then after 1981, and it just wasn't a great deal of anything because I didn't want to hit on the most obvious thing. But sometimes there's just no alternative. Excuse me. And so I went with what is a far superior choice. If you're looking for a werewolf movie, that's 1981's An American Werewolf in London. That is a fucking monster. That is a fucking beast. That is an intimidating thing. Look at this thing. It's just a beast. That is an original monster. Within 5 minutes of watching An American Werewolf in London, you can see that, you can tell who these two characters are, David Naughton and Griffin Dunn. They're just these college kids, or 20-somethings backpacking through Europe. They're just kids, they go into this bar and, it's just, within a couple of minutes, everything is like firmly established. It's a fantastic movie. Now, I do have a small resentment with An American Werewolf in London, but that's because my favorite movie monster is the werewolf, and I'm always resentful that they turn werewolf movies a lot of times into comedies. But it's a damn good movie and probably the best werewolf movie there is out there, or at least in the top three. There are some older ones. Werewolf of London, I think from like 1935, which is just a fantastic werewolf movie. And there's one other that I can't think of off the top of my head that I rate up there. But for some reason, I'm drawing a blank on it. But if you get a chance to watch the old Universal Werewolf of London, that is an amazing werewolf movie. It's genuinely fucking creepy. And there's no comedy in that whatsoever. I love watching that movie. It's one of my tops. So if you get a chance, well, it's been 40 years, so I'm sure everybody by now has seen American Werewolf. And if you haven't, for some ungodly reason, go out and watch it. Here's my thing. If you could combine maybe the grisliness of the Howling with the special effects and the superior script of American Werewolf, you might have the ultimate werewolf movie. And they both came out in the same year. But unfortunately, the twain did not meet, and we each got what we got. Here's my thing, and I'm just going to close with this. It's been 40 years since An American Werewolf in London. It's been 40 years since The Howling. I think 1981 was also the year for Wolfen, but that wasn't exactly a werewolf movie with Albert Finney. How have we not come up with something superior at this point? We're due. We are due for the next generation's werewolf movie. And Eric was just in here a second ago saying tomorrow night's show is going to be better because we're covering a hell of a werewolf movie called Howl, which is just a fantastic British werewolf film that he and I both caught, and we're going to cover it tomorrow. And I'm looking forward as fuck to that tomorrow. But how have we not surpassed American Werewolf? Is it because, something like Del Toro's The Wolfman, was it Joe Johnston's The Wolfman, sort of got pushed through by the studio execs and they were forced to use CGI? That probably would have been the successor, but, it kind of falls flat. Sooner or later, someone's going to have to produce the Ultimate Werewolf movie, and I'm hoping that it's sooner rather than later. So that's basically my take on the Howling. Don't fucking watch it. That's my take on it. That's it for me. Catch American Werewolf in London if you can. If you watch this video, thank you for stopping by, Eric, Steve, and the other person who, I couldn't read their message. I apologize about that. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll be back tomorrow at 8 o'clock with Howl, which is actually a good fucking werewolf movie. But that's it for now. And until then, don't waste your time with more bullshit. Good night.